Hi guys, welcome to my video. I sure have filmed this 3 times and lost the first 2. Let's try take 3. Hi guys, so today I'm going to be talking about Lighting 101, the basics of lighting. This is the question I've received the most on my social media, so we're going to talk about it today. So there are 4 things we can use to describe light. Those are the intensity, the quality, the angle, and the color. I'm going to break those down for you. So when we're shooting a scene, whether it be for TikTok or if it's for a film or a music video or anything, when we describe how bright the different lights are in the scene, we're talking about the intensity of the light. So the most bright light is usually called the key light, and then it's talking about how bright are the other lights in comparison to that key light. So for example, when I shot the Arwen video, I had a lot of light being pumped into this scene for the dream sort of sequence, filling in a lot of those shadows to sort of suggest a more romantic, dreamy type atmosphere. If I just had one light source letting it be very contrasty, it suggests more of a dark mood. You see it used a lot in horror or thrillers or noir films. So when you're thinking about your light, we can really use, whether we pump a lot in to fill in those shadows or if we let them fall to contrast, we can use the intensity of our light and the differentiation in the intensities to help us tell story. Next thing we're talking about is the quality of light. So when we talk about quality, the light can either be hard light or soft light. A hard light is something that's going to cast very distinct shadows, harsh shadows on the face. It's very contrasty. It can be very dramatic, but it can be quite unflattering. Basically, this is an undiffused light source. Our biggest source of natural hard light is the sun. And to get soft light, we basically just need to diffuse that light. So you can think about clouds in the sky on an overcast day. Everything looks a lot softer. The light tends to wrap around the face and can be much more flattering. In regards to how this relates to us when we're making TikToks or videos, a lot of people have ring lights. Ring lights are but a soft source of light, as opposed to say a lamp, which would be more of a hard light source that if we want to soften things down, we're going to have to diffuse it or reflect light back into it. We can soften the light up by reflecting more light back into the shadows. We can do this, it's also really dependent on where you are and what you have available to you. So if you have a white wall, if you shoot in a white room, white naturally reflects. So your light is going to just pretty naturally bounce around the room and probably soften up that light a bit. If you're like me and you shoot on a black background, it absorbs light. So if you want to reflect, you're going to need to bring something else in to reflect something, whether that be a reflector or a white sheet or a piece of white cardboard, whatever it is. You can get really creative with what you want to use as your makeshift tools, but white is what you need to use to reflect. White or silver. I have a white wall here that I use sometimes if the light's a little bit too intense. I will reflect the light back into that wall and have it reflect off, and it softens that light source up a bit. Okay, I've actually lost the audio for this clip, so I'm going to do a sneaky voiceover. Here you can see I've got a pretty harsh, intense side light on Luna, and so I just wanted to demonstrate what happens when you bring a reflector in just to soften those shadows up. You can see this is a silver side reflector that I've got right here, and it's just softening those shadows up around Luna's face. The next thing is the angle of the light. This is a huge part of storytelling and how you can change how you look and how the audience perceives you. So where you put the light really affects what the audience thinks. So here we have front lighting, where the light is coming from directly in front of the model. You see here we have side lighting, where the light is coming from the side of camera. Backlight from behind the model. Top light from above. This is quite often what we get when we have just overhead lights or using lights in a house. And bottom lighting from below. This is very horror film-esque, not particularly flattering. And we can use these things to tell a lot of stories. For example, I use backlighting with a lot of my magical characters. I have them illuminated from behind as if they're being lit by magic or by some sort of ethereal source. You think about bottom lighting, that can be quite spooky. You think about horror movies, telling horror movie stories. The things you want to avoid are top lighting generally, from the very top, because you tend to get very dark shadows underneath your eyes. You look like a raccoon. And front lighting, so right from the front can be, it's done quite often in like beauty tutorials and stuff, but what I find is that you basically get rid of any shadows on the face, you flatten your face out, and it can just make your face look really flat. So what's typically thought of as beauty lighting is 3/4 to the side and up quite high. It means that the light is going to fall in a way that's quite flattering. You still cast some shadows around the jaw specifically. It can be a really, if you're looking for a good place to start, that can be a good one to start with. But you can play so much with side lighting and backlighting and combining different angles to tell story, because it really does change the shape of the face depending on where you put your light. And the final thing is color. Color can be used so powerfully in storytelling, and I try to use it myself with specific characters. You can look at how we use light with the twins. The twins for Sunderland, their color has always been green because the world is radioactive. I use blue a lot to suggest either nighttime or to suggest underwater. You use orange to suggest a firelight. You can be really creative. You can use red to suggest that something's wrong. There's lots of different ways of suggesting mood and emotion through the use of color. Another thing that's really beneficial to keep in mind is that TikTok does have a sensor in place to censor out fake blood. What I have found is that by using colored and putting either a blue light, a red light, or a green light, any sort of light over the top that will distort the color of fake blood, quite often you can get a bit more through those sensors than you might be able to otherwise. But we can also think about how we can use color to move through emotion and move through scenes. For example, in one of Charlie's backstory videos, I've used a shift to the color blue to suggest a real shift in emotion, a very sad shift in emotion. Or in Connor and Rudra's video, when we're saying something has gone very wrong here, there's bad stuff going on in the harbour, we have a shift to a very intense red light. We're saying bad things are happening right now. Look, everything is washed with red. So you can really start thinking about how you want to use your light creatively to tell stories. I just wanted to show you guys the basic lights that I have that I use for filming. Most of them are lights that have been sourced from either like my local hardware store or Kmart. The only proper light I have is a ring light, which I'm not going to move because that's the main thing that's lighting me right now. But I wanted to show you all the other sort of tricky little lights that I have in my arsenal for filming and lighting things for TikTok. So first thing I've got. These are some lamps that I bought from Bunnings. They were $10. What I do have in them though is these LED color changing bulbs, which have been a game changer because I'm able to just quickly cycle through and change the mood of my lighting setup dependent on what I'm trying to go for in any sort of scene. I have dodgily clamped them to these lighting stands because before we were putting them up on boxes, because the whole thing was we were trying to make sure that we had them up at a certain angle, that we weren't having that bottom lighting horror film effect of the low angled lighting. We wanted to have it up high on us so that we could have it be flattering. The thing that's great about having these only just like very quickly clamped on is we can still take them off and use them if we want to have moving lights, which we have used to emulate police flashing lights. We've got the two lights moving here, or we want to emulate some sort of, you know, divine intervention. We have the lights come into the scene. So these are used a lot for us. The next light that I have that's very handy is this little LED mermaid light that sort of emulates a night sky slash kind of underwater if you're clever with it. It has the option of having like the moon and little pinpricks of starlight in there, or you can just have it be a plain color. We can dial through all the different colors. Usually this is what we have as our backdrop because we do shoot on black. If we're not careful, if we have black hair or a black wig on or black clothes, we will melt into the background. So we tend to light up our background with one of these to sort of just try and separate us from the background a little bit. So this is really useful. I also have sometimes put it on me if they're a magical character like Tink. Quite often I'll have the green light sort of moving on my face or my entire costume from the front, and then have, because Tink is backlit. So this is my front light for Tink. Tinkerbell is actually a really interesting one because I didn't actually make the decisions on how I was going to light that on my own, because the Azrai had actually made Peter content already where Tink was represented by a green light. So I had to incorporate that into my filming to make sure that I matched. And that can be a real challenge, is to make sure that you're trying to match people's light, but it can be one of the funnest parts of filming when you get it right. So it's a really big challenge, but it's really fun. Next thing I wanted to show you guys is these little lamps I found at Kmart for like $6 to $10. They're battery powered. They have a couple of different settings. We've got like 6 of them now. They're so handy. They have a flickering candle light, and then like a straight on light, and then, you know, a cool light, which we don't really use. We use it mainly to emulate firelight, and we've painted some of them up and dressed them so they work a little bit better with some of our more medieval type of characters to make them fit. We've taken these on location when we filmed Witcher content. These get used so much. They're so handy. So that would be one thing I'd recommend that you guys check out, is trying to find a light that you can use that will emulate firelight, because one, TikTok doesn't like it when you use actual flames. 2, safety. So those are the lights that I use most often. I sometimes use actual candles, but very rarely. Mainly it's my little lanterns, my ring light, and my little underwater light that we use. So I hope that was handy, guys. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. I would think I will probably end up doing a more in-depth lighting tutorial, maybe on like 3-point lighting. But feel free to ask any questions and on anything you'd like more info on.